All right, let's dive into something a little spooky tonight.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, we're going deep into horror podcasts.
Ooh, nice.
But not just any horror podcasts.
Okay.
We're checking out Hindi horror podcasts, actually.
Oh, cool.
And it's all thanks to this awesome newsletter you sent over.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, it's got all these recommendations, and
Uh-huh.
I'm already loving the way they're talking about this whole genre.
Yeah, it's cool how they really get into like why horror podcasts are so unique.
Yeah.
Especially like within the whole Hindi podcasting scene.
I know. It's like a whole world I never even knew existed.
Right.
Okay, so, first of all,
Yeah.
why horror podcasts?
Hmm.
Is it really that different from watching, horror movie?
I think it totally is.
Really?
Think about it.
Okay.
When you watch a horror movie, you know
Yeah.
they're giving you all the visuals.
Right?
But with the podcast,
Yeah.
your imagination is in charge.
Ooh.
You have to create the scary scenes in your own mind.
That's so true.
And that can be way scarier
I bet.
because it's personal, It's like your own fears coming to life in the dark.
Oh, that's creepy.
Right.
The newsletter actually makes this point about, these podcasts being almost like survival tips for the unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you'd actually use them if you, ran into a ghost or something.
Uh-huh.
Right.
But it makes you think, though, right?
Yeah.
What would you actually do
Oh, my God.
if you suddenly found yourself in one of these, totally terrifying situations?
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
These stories really make you face those, what if moments
Totally.
in a way that movies just don't.
For sure.
Okay, so I'm sold on the whole concept.
Good.
But what about, the specific podcasts?
Okay, so,
What's the first one they recommend?
well, they start off with Spookcast.
Spookcast. Okay.
It's this show where, these two hosts,
Uh-huh.
Abhishek Basu and Manjila Bhattacharya, they write and perform these super immersive Hindi horror stories.
That's cool.
And get this, they weave in sound effects and music to make it a total cinematic experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That reminds me.
Yeah.
The newsletter specifically says that you should not listen to these episodes alone in the dark.
Haha. Yeah.
So have you ever, made that mistake?
Let's just say I prefer to have all the lights on
Okay.
when I'm exploring the world of audio horror.
Yeah, good call.
But anyway, Spookcast isn't the only recommendation.
Oh, okay.
They also talk about horror tape.
Horror tape. Yeah.
It's by V.K. Rawat, and it takes a slightly different approach.
Oh, how so?
Well, it's a mix of fictional horror stories
Yeah.
and then also explorations of real-life horror facts and urban legends.
Interesting.
It's they're kind of investigating the unexplained,
Yeah.
and playing on that fear of the unknown we were talking about before.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. It totally connects to what the newsletter says about
Yeah.
these podcasts,
Yeah.
giving us glimpses into a world beyond what we understand.
For sure.
I love it when a recommendation makes you think,
Absolutely.
Okay, so what else?
Well, they also recommend Horror Podcast Hindi.
Horror podcast Hindi, all right.
It's by RJ M. Praveen, and this one focuses specifically on real-life ghost stories and paranormal encounters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and apparently RJ Praveen, he promises these spine-chilling encounters
Oh.
that prove that, quote, the real horror paranormal experience is closer than you think, end quote.
Okay, they're messing with us now, right?
Aha, maybe.
Do you actually believe in ghosts?
Well, whether or not ghosts exist, that's a question people have been debating for centuries.
True.
I think what's more interesting is why we're so drawn to these stories.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Why do they fascinate us and terrify us so much?
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely something about the unknown that keeps us coming back for more, even if it scares us.
Totally.
Speaking of scary, this next recommendation sounds intense.
Which one?
Bay Originals.
Oh, yeah, that one's great.
It's an international award-winning Hindi horror podcast, right?
It is.
And it features original stories from the heartlands of India.
Yep.
Wow. And it's presented in a movie-style format. I'm sold.
Aha, awesome.
What's really interesting to me, though,
Yeah.
is that the creator, Ankan Bose,
Right?
is actually a horror fiction author.
That's right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
that just makes me think there's got to be, a certain level of depth and craftsmanship to these stories.
Yeah, I think so too.
You don't always find that in podcasts.
Yeah. Definitely not.
I'm already starting to see why this newsletter is so valuable.
Uh-huh.
It's they're giving us way more than just a list of titles,
Totally agree.
Okay, so what else? What other spooky surprises do they have in store?
Okay, so they also recommend Vokahanyan.
Vokahanyan.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's by Deepak Meditwal, and unlike those other podcasts we were talking about, this one covers a wider range of genres.
Really?
Like horror, paranormal, sci-fi, mystery.
Wow.
Even psychological thrillers.
Talk about variety.
Right.
Is there anything this podcast doesn't cover?
Haha, I know, right?
Okay, but before we get lost in all these amazing shows,
Yeah.
can we just go back to Vokahanyan for a sec?
Sure.
What makes it so special?
Well, besides the variety,
Mm-hmm.
it's a top-charting show in Hindi fiction and drama.
Oh, wow.
And get this, it was a finalist for the HT Podmasters Award for Storytelling in 2024.
No way.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
right?
I'm sensing a pattern here,
Oh, yeah.
This newsletter just seems to have a knack for finding these hidden gems.
Haha, they do.
I mean, we're barely scratching the surface, and I'm already hooked.
I know, right?
This newsletter is like having a personal guide through the world of Hindi horror podcasts.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so what else is in this treasure trove of recommendations?
All right, so their last recommendation is for a show that kind of blurs the line between reality and fiction.
Ooh, intriguing.
It's called Horror Story.
Horror story. Okay,
And it's by Sandeep Patra.
got it.
Yeah.
That one's definitely going on my list.
Cool.
I'm loving this deep dive already.
Me too.
This newsletter is seriously a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
I never realized how much depth and variety there was in this genre.
I know, it's pretty amazing.
All right, well, let's keep exploring because there's clearly a lot more to unpack here.
Definitely.
I'm excited to see where this newsletter takes us next.
Me too. You know, as we're going through these recommendations,
Yeah.
I'm really noticing how much the newsletter talks about
Mhm.
the immersive experience of audio storytelling.
Oh, because you have to create the visuals yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like our brains become these amazing special effects machines,
Yeah.
just conjuring up the scariest images you can imagine,
Yeah.
all based on sound.
That's so true.
And this newsletter really seems to understand that.
Yeah, and I bet that's why they highlight
Mhm.
the sound design in shows like Spookcast.
Oh, for sure.
It's not just about like
Yeah.
adding spooky music or whatever.
Right.
It's like they're creating a whole world
Exactly.
that feels real and terrifying
hmm
through sound alone.
Think about it.
Okay.
A creaking door at just the right moment.
Ooh, yeah.
A whisper that seems to come from right behind you.
Oh, stop.
Or like a sudden jarring sound
Oh my God.
that makes you jump out of your skin.
Okay, don't.
Those are the things that really put you in the middle of the horror,
That's true.
you know?
Yeah.
And when you combine that kind of sound design with a good story
Yeah.
and a skilled narrator,
Oh, yeah.
it's like a recipe for an amazing experience.
No wonder this newsletter is so into horror podcasts.
Right. They really get it.
Yeah.
And you know, earlier we were kind of joking about that line from the newsletter
Yeah.
about podcasts being like survival tips for the unknown.
Oh, yeah.
But the more I think about it,
Yeah.
the more I see something deeper there.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying there's more to it than just
I think
jump scares and creepy sounds?
maybe it's not about like literal survival tips,
Okay.
but more about
Mm.
mentally preparing ourselves for the unexpected,
Ooh, interesting.
you know, for those moments in life
Mhm.
when we feel fear or uncertainty.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like by listening to these stories,
Mm-hmm.
these fictional scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
we're building up some kind of mental resilience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we're facing our fears in a safe environment.
Right.
And that can actually help us feel more prepared and confident.
I like that.
Yeah,
When we face challenges in the real world.
for sure.
You know, it's funny. A lot of
Mhm.
these podcasts seem to be exploring the darker side of human nature.
Oh, totally.
Like
Yeah.
greed and revenge and obsession. Right. All those things we try to keep hidden.
And by confronting those things,
Mm.
even if it's just in a story,
Yeah,
it can be super insightful.
I can see that.
It can help us understand ourselves better, like the
Okay.
good and the bad.
So it's not just about entertainment then.
Right.
It's about like self-discovery too.
I think so.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
For a horror podcast?
Horror in any form
Yeah.
can be a powerful tool for introspection.
That's interesting.
It challenges our assumptions, you know,
Mhm.
pushes us outside our comfort zones,
Right.
makes us question what we believe.
Wow, this newsletter really seems to understand that side of the genre too.
Oh, definitely.
You're right, they have.
Mm,
This newsletter has completely changed my perspective
that's great.
on horror podcasts.
Yeah.
It's not just about cheap thrills. It's a way to explore the human condition,
I love
the
that.
shadows within ourselves and in the world around us. I'm really impressed with how deep their insights are.
Me too.
Okay, I'm even more excited to check out these recommendations now.
Awesome.
And speaking of digging deeper,
Yes.
what else did this newsletter highlight?
Oh, there's more.
Because I'm ready for more. It's really amazing how much variety there is in Hindi horror.
Right.
Like, this newsletter has opened my eyes to a whole world of storytelling I never even knew existed.
I know. It's pretty cool.
We've got everything from classic ghost stories to real-life paranormal investigations.
And don't forget the psychological thrillers.
Oh, yeah, and sci-fi.
It's like a buffet of fear.
Yeah.
Each podcast offers something different.
Right, like different ways to tap into our deepest anxieties.
You know what else is interesting?
What?
How these podcasts create a sense of community.
Oh, yeah, even though we're listening alone.
Exactly. It's like we're all gathered around a virtual campfire.
I love that.
Sharing these spooky stories.
Right. And that shared experience can be so powerful.
Absolutely.
Especially for a genre that's all about isolation and fear,
It's like a reminder.
Yeah.
That we're not alone in our anxieties.
Yes.
That other people have felt these chills and thrills too.
And the newsletter makes another good point.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about how horror podcasts can be like edutainment.
Interesting.
It's not just about scaring ourselves silly,
right,
but also learning something new and expanding our understanding of the world.
And even ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Like we were saying before about how these podcasts make us face those uncomfortable truths.
Exactly.
About human nature.
Yeah, the darkness that's in all of us.
So in a way, listening to these podcasts can be a form of self-discovery.
I think so, yeah.
That's amazing.
This newsletter has really changed the way I think about the genre.
Me too.
They do a great job of highlighting not just the entertainment value, but also the deeper, more thought-provoking stuff.
Absolutely. It's clear they're passionate about sharing these hidden gems with people.
For sure.
Well, I'm definitely inspired to check out all these recommendations.
You too.
And for anyone listening who's also intrigued, we'll have links to all the podcasts and, of course, the newsletter itself.
Yes, definitely check out the newsletter.
In the show notes.
You really need to subscribe.
They're doing something special over there.
Absolutely. They offer a level of insight and curation that's hard to find.
I agree.
I'd encourage everyone to dive into the world of Hindi horror podcasts.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
Exactly.
It's like they say in the newsletter. The best stories are the ones that keep us up at night.
So true.
So dim the lights, put on your headphones, and get ready to be spooked.
And intrigued.
And maybe even a little bit enlightened.
By the world of Hindi horror podcasts.
That's a good way to put it.
And as you listen, pay attention to what really gets to you.
Okay.
What scares you the most? What makes you think? What stories stick with you?
Right.
Long after the episode is over.
Those are the good ones.
Those are the gems.
The ones that make you want to keep exploring the shadows.
Until next time.
Keep those lights on.
Unless you dare to venture into the darkness.